A false human seeks self-feelings. A true human seeks self-explanations. Now take that with you as your guide for the rest of the day and find out which camp you're in. A false human seeks self-feelings. What does that mean? Just that. Your life, the way it is now, is dedicated to feeling something, chuck it out, and dedicate it to understanding something. Now you have to first understand that the opening statements of the talk apply very much to you. You would rather have an emotional upheaval, a sadness, a depression, a rage, a confusion. You would rather have that than have an explanation of why your life continues the way it does. You reject the explanation because you sense, you know, that the explanation will destroy your love for feeling, and you now love feeling more than you love explanation, which is the sadness of your life. A false person, therefore, is a weak person. And that's what we're going to concentrate on for a while. Human weakness. And first let me tell you how contagious it is. Weakness, wherever it puts in an appearance, is contagious, spreads around the room, spreads around the country, spreads around the world, spreads around the family. One weak person will always infect the other people in the room or in the nation. Why? Because the other people are weak too. That's where they're all living. One firecracker sets off another firecracker. It's all a part of the same explosive bunch. Now, I'm giving you a self-explanation and a warning. What I'm going to explain to you will take away some of the danger, and if you followed it all the way, you would remove all danger from your life. You're in danger simply because you're one firecracker in the package. That's why you can be set off. That's why a gloom, disappointment, or hurt face and another person can give you the same. What you want to do is stop being a part of the firecracker package altogether and be something else, something higher. Weakness is contagious. It spreads because, hang on to your chairs now, this is what you want. You want to feel weak. Now, isn't that already startling? Isn't that a startling self-explanation? The other person, what's his situation? He's complaining about something. They didn't treat me right. We should get this. Let's go after our so-called rights. Let's go after it. He's talking your language, because that's what you always say. I've never been treated right. Since as a child, I've always been given the second-hand clothes, and the girls the second-hand rose. I think that's a song, isn't it? That's how my mind associates while I'm talking. You follow the leader, one of the sheep in the crowd of sheep, because that's what you prefer over an explanation. Now, you are in danger by remaining in your love for weakness, for following the lead of a coward. You follow a coward and you go over the cliff with him. He is always going over the cliff. I'm trying to stop you from doing that. Everyone is a faker. All fakers are weak. All fakers try to convince you that they're strong. I'll give you an interesting example of that. Have you noticed, I'm sure you've seen, but have you noticed, on television, someone who's in trouble with the law or under a threat of some kind, someone who's about to be hauled into court or going to prison or accused of something that's serious, accused of betraying the country or whatever, passing on secrets. From now on, whenever you see such a person, you see them all the time because that's what makes the news, right? Spectacular criminality. I want you to watch in how many cases that accused person or that actual criminal puts on a front of being strong. Notice how he quips with a reporter. Notice the forced and fixed smile that he has on his face as he called off. And he has handcuffs on, and he has that front of bravado on, like a movie studio set that collapses, and it collapses when he gets inside the police van. But I've given you an example that should lead you to a clearer understanding of your behavior because you're doing the same thing. Now, maybe you didn't commit a crime and you're not going to be on television, but you do the same thing. You have a false front. How many will admit you have a false front? All right, do it more and more. See it that that's what you do, because as long as you love the weakness of the lie, of the false front, as long as you love that, you can't go on to strength. If you love weakness, if that's your first recourse, if that's the first thing you do, if that's what you cling to, how can you have anything else? You can't. Let's go back a little bit to the actual person on the TV show. And the acts are well rehearsed, believe me. They know they're going to be on TV, and they're horrified. You know what they're horrified at? What everyone is horrified at, self-exposure. That is, someone seeing behind the false front that they have and seeing them as they actually are. You know the torment of that, of someone seeing your parents. Remember when your parents caught you? What'd they catch you at? Come on, it's okay, conscious memory. What'd your parents catch you at? Remember how that shocked and hurt and you wanted to drop through the floor and disappear from the world? That sort of thing, exposed for that little petty theft or the lie you told, or you took advantage of someone you didn't think anyone would know. How many know what I'm talking about? We all know what we're talking about. You notice the variety of stage performances that man on television who's been accused, how he handles it. Is he's the jokester type, trying to pass it off as nothing too serious. And surely with the lawyer he has, he's going to be free in a few days. The jokester type, the assertive type. There's absolutely no evidence against me. And I can think of examples. I could go on for weeks if I wanted to, but you just cull your memory for what I'm talking about. Or the quiet type, or the running away type. How about the type that puts the coat over his head so the cameras can't watch him? All forms of weakness and cowardice. Now, I said human beings are the same, whether they're accused of a great crime or whether they're just living ordinary life and don't get in front of the camera. If you put on a false exterior, you will come to believe in it. And when the mask gets hardened, you won't ever be able to take it off for your entire life, and you'll wear it till you're 60, 70, 80 or older. And it hurts because it's unnatural. It's not natural for you to be a self-deceiver. And you feel the unnatural. It hurts, doesn't it? This is why you feel so vaguely uncomfortable. You can't define it clearly. It's just something hammering and haunting you all day long that you can't put your finger on and say, that's why I feel bad, or this is why I feel hurt. You can't do that. Because the mask that you put on when you're a little child and never learned how to take it off, unfortunately. That's become fixed on you, and you don't even know it's there. Or if you catch a glimpse of the smiling mask, for example, if you catch a glimpse of it, you say, that's real, that's me. And you see yourself forcing this smile, and your cunning comes in and takes over, and that's what you bring down to the office. That's what you put on in the street when you meet someone. You put on the artificial mask, maybe, let's say, stick to the smiling one. The pleasant manner. That's a pleasant manner. It's not a pleasant nature. And there's your contradiction and there's your pain. You're acting one way and feeling another. All right, now you listen to me. There's never any need for you to try to convince any other person on earth that you're pleasant, that you're nice, that you're smiling, that you're healthy, that you're whole. As a matter of fact, that's the last thing you want to do, because you're trying to convince them, you convince yourself, and you're stuck on yourself, stuck with yourself. The glued mask and the whole costume is so hard, and anyone tries to tell you to take it off, you're going to hate them. You've taken your weakness as being actually you. Your weakness, which you call strength. Trying to make other people think you're strong. Why should you want to convince anyone at all about your virtues? Well, the reason you want to is because you want them to believe in the virtues that you can't believe in. You're hopeful that where you fail, they will succeed, and then it will bounce back, and then you can believe in your own virtue. It'll never happen. If it's not there, there's nothing to grab hold of and say, see, that's what there's nothing there but falsehood and division and a cranky nature. How about that? How about crabby? Is that a little better? Crabby nature. There is no such thing as an authentically smiling crab. Now you walk down to the seashore and see for yourself. See that it's not happening actually inside of you. So, look at the relief you have wrong that he doesn't have to exploit and use anyone else. He's weak. All right. A rule starting today. Associate the word weakness in human beings with the word desperation in human beings. Now, if you always do that, that connection between two words will help you when you think of weakness in another person, help you to evade the dangers of his weakness, because you realize that he is desperate, which means that I just explained that he is totally conscienceless, no conscience at all, absolutely none. Now this takes a lot of self-searching. Now I have to tell you that you have to do this searching I'm going to recommend and urge you to do before you can see it in someone else. That is, you're desperate. You're weak. You feel so helpless that you must use every contact, every opportunity to try to give yourself something to eat, something to drink, psychological food and drink. You have to desperately not only use it where it comes to you accidentally, but you have to build up conditions where you can use that person and that organization and that circumstance and that place. You have to use it in order to try to feel good, because you don't feel good. Weakness always feels bad. If you know your callousness toward the welfare and the goodness of others, the good life of others, if you know that you have no regard for anyone else, which you don't, now you swallow that. That's the truth. You can't care for anyone. You don't have a nature that can care. You're a user. You're an exploiter. That's how desperate you are. Now, you must see that first before you can be safe from the insidious evil of other people who are going to use you and exploit you. Starting with the hobo on the street who comes up and wants a handout. Remember, he's not just a weak man. You use stronger terms for that. He's an utterly defeated human being. Starting with him to the well-dressed con man who's on television, who influences millions in whatever area of misconduct he has. Starting from the bottom to the top, they're all alike. I wish you would know how you are the sucker in the con game of social relations. And you're the cause of it. You've invited it because you don't see that you do the same thing and see that that's self-defeating behavior. When you no longer harm yourself, no one else can harm you. If you harm yourself, anyone can harm you. You've asked for it. You're on that level. You're one firecracker in the package of firecrackers. One goes off, you have to go off one way or another. And you'll take these self-feelings of a weak, false person. You actually take those horrible, painful feelings as being good for you. You know why? A man out in the ocean, any little bit of wood becomes, the ship sank, and he hangs onto that little bit of wood. Any piece of wood becomes a lifesaver for him. Right? Any kind of a mood or emotional upheaval, any kind, any nature, jealousy, anything, thoughts of revenge, all that becomes a desperately clutched firecracker. It's going to go off. It's going to explode right in your face. It must. Now, I'm telling you why you're never able to be content wherever you go. The reason you can't be content because you are the very essence of discontent. You are it. You're the whole business. Now, I know what you thought, as you always do. If all I am is hopeless weakness, what hope is there for me? That is your hope, to know it. You are it without knowing it. You must see it. You must be honest. You can't lie your way to heaven. Get that fact down. You know that there's ample evidence, however, that you can lie your way down to hell. Well, what do you have? Heavenly feelings or hellish ones? Are you quickly offended by people? Are you quickly offended or frightened by what you're hearing this morning? That means that you love the downward trail. And you've got the mask on and you're clinging to that. If you know that you're all wrong about the way you've been conducting your life, that is the beginning of authentic self-transformation. You will learn. If you ever start the path sincerely, you will learn, as I've told you before, and I'll say it again in different words, going halfway up the mountain is not the same as being on the mountain. You can't come to a class once a month and say things are going to get better. They're not. They're going to get worse because your heart isn't here. If you're able to come here to every meeting, you should be here at every meeting. And you'd be taking all these things in so that in between classes you can be, oh, what a fiery student you are. You're going to use everything from now. You're going to go shopping. You use that. Nothing is unused. You're so spiritually economical. and you want so much to understand that you're wreckage on the sea of life. You want to be honest about that because you heard that if you see that, then things can change, and that's the fact. You are where you are physically because of what you are inwardly, invisibly. Now, I want you all to think, and think a long ways about it because it's further than you think. I want you to think about what you do with yourself all day long. At night, even in bedtime. What do you do with your physical self? We'll start with that. It also includes what you do with your mind, but if you start with the physical, that's easier to see and explain to yourself. Where do you go? What do you do? What do you plan that is unnecessary, that is foolish, that is mechanical, that is harmful, that is done in a state of psychic sleep? What activities, even in your own home, do you indulge in simply because you don't know what else to do with yourself? It's a very profound statement that the devil finds things for idle hands to do. Think about that. That's true, it's a fact. When you don't know the right thing to do, you do the wrong thing. And the wrong thing is always something that you go after or do, getting your collection of shells in a better display box so you can show them off to visitors who come. When you do something wrong, it's simply because you don't know what's right to do. When you know what's right to do, your physical movements, where you go, where you finally find yourself involved in, that changes toward health by itself because, like the old song in the Bowery, you don't want to go there anymore. Because one time when you were there, you looked around and you asked yourself, what on earth am I doing here? Have you ever had that yet? Please go after it. Why do you go to that group meeting that you go to? Find out what's false in you that wants to meet other false people so a whole room of 300 false people can lie and say we're true. That's why they get together. I told you, weakness is desperate. Cowards flock together and lie to each other, and all of them are dragging each other down to hell. You can't afford to do that anymore. Do you suspect that these activities that you now say are necessary, do you suspect maybe that they're false and just useless and are draining your life away? Get more suspicious of it. One day, something will happen all by itself, and you'll be so pleased, so delighted. For the last 10 years, you've been going out of your house and going out, doing a certain thing, going to a certain place. Just like on clockwork, you go out steadily. And then you hear what is above those activities. You hear it in this room or read the books. It's a fascinating experience. Get to it fast. After 10 years of going out and doing what you're doing, what you used to do, you're at home one day and you're in that horrible, marvelous position of 50-50. Got it? For a whole hour, you wander around your living room. You've got all your pink suede shoes on. I don't know what I'm talking about. Blue suede shoes. You've got them on, and you've got your topper hat on. I just say it as it comes to my mind. How do I know? And for a whole hour, you walk from your out of the house to the car, and you walk back to the car inside the house again. 20 times. I've given you a physical example of the inner thing. Torn back and forth. Don't know which to do. One thought says go, another says stay home. Back. Oh, will you please try to get to that state today? Because when you get to that state, you're not very far from over the line to where you know, oh, this is a poem. You know you don't have to go. And mentally, at least, you'll take a long piece of paper. And with a combination of groaning and sighing with relief, puts his bag down, he's in despair. Because he says, what do I do next? Now, it's not enough to think about all those exciting activities. Already he senses the emptiness of them, but he can't be honest about it. So, all this group of people, they start to get angry, which they cover up in front of the others. You know that big lake where they get caught the big fish, the little muddy pond, and the pier, what do you call it, the wooden thing that goes out into the lake, the pier, I guess. It's all the broken boards on it. You have to be careful you don't stumble over. Fishing is awful. Food, like cafe that you won't go to anymore. Everything was bad about it. The room was cold or hot. They all start to complain. Now listen, I've given you something that's absolutely so typical of everyone, and they're not here this morning to hear the explanation so that they can stop doing the dumb things that they're continuing doing, including going to the resorts. All angry, all furious, all complaining. Oh yes, and here's another real great psychological insight you can get. And you'll know that this happens to you. Bring it up to consciousness so you see. The man complains about all the things, the dancing, they've got it on an old crank-up record player. And it's one of those thick records that only has one side. You know what the man is singing on the record? A song I used to hear when I was a boy, a certain age, and the old record with a nasal twang to it. The record played, I don't want to get well, I don't want to get well, I'm in love with a beautiful nurse. That record had been there for 60 years. It's the only one in the whole place. How many would like to hear me sing again sometime? I got another one later on. They want to find who's responsible for their misery. And of course, they never call themselves a sucker for falling for the advertising. Oh no, the other person betrayed them. Because I'm not a sucker, I'm an intelligent man. They betrayed me. Come out here in the muddy pond, the terrible food, dried tortillas. Tortillas? It has an L in it, I think, somewhere. So they look around for the manager. The manager has more sense than they did. He took off after he got the money. You listen to me. Notice the difficulty you have in finding the manager to complain to. It changes, doesn't it? Former boyfriend, former boss, condition that you were forced to go into and didn't want to. Always wanting to complain to someone, but there's no one around to complain. They take... This one point alone would be well worth the talk. If you remember that the weak people who betray you because of your weakness, they're going to take off as soon as they can. Absolutely. They're going to grab and run. They're going to hit and run. Everyone does it because they have got to move on to the next sucker. They're that desperate. And if you're just still doing that yourself, you're still going to get taken by them. Couldn't find the manager. And the sad part of this story is not one of them, not a single one of them, had the decency or the honesty to see the real problem. Not one of them went back to their motel room after crabbing all around the place there to each other and to themselves. Not one of them had the decency to go back and just sit down quietly in their little cabin and ask, how come I'm here in the first place? How come I'm here in the first place? If they'd done that, then they could track it back, couldn't they? Because every single one of them had their own secret, nefarious motive for being there. It wasn't just to go out and enjoy nature a little bit, which would be a legitimate thing. We're part of nature, therefore we enjoy nature. The pretty hills and so on. But because they were lost and sick and desperate people, they all went for a wrong reason. One woman might have gone just to spite someone who says you shouldn't go out there. Maybe just to spite someone, she went out there. A man went out there because he wanted to prove what a great fisherman and sportsman he was. Because all the men down the office were great fishermen, whatever. The woman went to meet a man, which she did. Unhappily, she met a man who was just of the same nature she was. And the romance didn't last very long, of course. They loved and fought and hated each other. Question. You will ask yourself, what am I doing here in this condition? Small or large. What are you doing having a petty quarrel with that other person? What am I doing here in this petty quarrel? You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place with them because you're in the wrong place with yourself. You first quarreled with yourself because the pressure of that is so strong. You exteriorize it in the outer world and quarrel with someone else because you're of a quarrelsome nature. What am I doing? This is what you really mean. What am I doing with this inwardly quarrelsome nature? Why do I stick with it? Why do I love it? Why do I persist in it? The answer is because in my ignorance it's the only thing I have known to do. That's the magic interpretation. It's the only thing you've known to do, and then you can see that the only thing you've known to do is awful for you. You know who makes it out finally? Do you know who is really saved? Really saved? The man or woman who really sees that happiness is better than misery. I am telling you that you don't know that yet. You think that misery is happiness because it seems to give you a persistent identity. It's not persistent at all. It's very shaky and it gets bumped out of your mind all the time, doesn't it? You picture yourself as being a smiling, nice person, and then you finally catch yourself growling and snarling at someone. That bumps the picture out of your mind. You were never the picture in the first place. And you're not the grouchy person either, by the way. You must never go to that resort, or you'll then begin to justify that and say, I have a right to hate people. It's a terrible world. You yourself, teacher sitting up in front of that class, you said it's a terrible world. Who said that gives you a right to hate it or to complain? You know where the manager went? Manager who, at least in this outside exterior part of it, you know where the manager went? He went back inside you. You were the betraying manager. You betrayed yourself. You promise yourself so much. Futile, pointless, self-whipping. You promise yourself so many good things. Why? Because in reality you don't have a single good thing, and that's the only thing you know to do. Don't you want to break the pattern? How many, please, let's see your hands. How many would like to break the pattern? There is a way to do it. You have heard this morning the way to do it. I want you to remember everything you've heard. I want you to no longer be afraid of giving up everything that you think you are so that you can finally know who you really are. That can and will happen. You will know who you really are, and that's liberty. Good morning. Let the life in truth be your life. Isn't that a great idea to start off with and to explore until the idea becomes our personal experience? Let the life in truth be my life, your life. To do that, we will call life for the next 45 minutes or so. We will describe it as energy. Life is energy, movement, action, intelligence. Energy in its original source is always intelligent, but it comes to unintelligent human minds, which then uses it for destructive and foolish purposes. Think of your thinking as one form of familiar energy. Thoughts come to you. You don't create your own ideas and intellectual ideas. They come to you. Notice that. If you're not trying to think in particular, you still continue to think. So thoughts themselves are a very special type of energy for human beings here on earth. You're always thinking, always planning something, but the energy is always moving through you. Now, you've already been told that there's a crossroads in your mind where your thoughts can either do good things or do bad things. And that should be evident to you, but must become more evident. That you can allow either wrong or right thoughts to think through your mind, and which will then project themselves outwardly for good conditions or bad conditions, good human relations or bad human relations. But this energy, mental energy, does get a little tired sometimes. If you notice you've been thinking long about a business project and you don't want to think anymore about that, so you shift to another thing, perhaps being entertained, and that is fine. Take physical energy. You're running around all day, conducting your affairs of life. A little later at night you get tired, and so the body says, rest. So there's a limited amount of physical energy before you have to allow heaven, which is the source of all energy, to renew your strength through rest. You know the phrase emotional exhaustion. Oh, all this fiery, worrisome moods and feelings, and some excitements and some plunging down from the excited thought to the depressed thought. All that is going on. But it's all, whether it's negative, positive thoughts, it's all a form of energy. And it's also for very limited use. This is the human use of divine power. And that's fine. Without it, we would have no life, no energy to move around here on this world. Then there is spiritual energy. That's different. It is the spiritual energy that comes down and activates the mind and the body and the emotions, that activates it, but it runs into free will, into human beings having a choice of what they're going to do with that energy. Unfortunately, and with great, incredible disaster, most human beings choose to use it to enthrone themselves, to make themselves the center of their own life, which is a false center, which therefore puts this egotist into physical, mental, or emotional conflict with the other egotist. People divide themselves into identities, into races, into nations, and because they will not see that it's all folly, they will go to war with the enemy. The enemy being always someone who is the opposite false identity they have. Both sides are false. Both sides in a war are wrong. Both sides in the petty or major verbal quarrel between two people, both sides are wrong. So we have some preliminary thoughts about life, about energy, and we want to find out why we are such victims of the wrong use of this enormous power that's coming to us, this unlimited power. Why are we victims? I might tell you right now that spiritual energy is unlimited for your use. The more you get and the more you use, the more you'll get. Get more, use it, you'll get more. This is for your personal experimentation and discovery. I said the body gets a little tired after a hard day's work or a hard day's worry. The emotions get... Now you not only have to say that, but you have to live it. And this your very wishing of that will give you the energy to maintain your stand. So that when you waver and wobble, as you will do many times throughout your upward climb, your initial declaration of independence, if you hang on to that first, last, and always, it will always bring you back to where it becomes your pronouncement that you want to find and connect yourself with a life force, the life force that put you here on earth in the first place. Haven't you wondered about that? Who put you here? How you got here? Well, I'll tell you, it's very simple. The energy of God, which is God himself, of course, the same thing, put you here on earth. Now it's up to you. It's up to you to begin to choose what comes from the Heavenly Father to grow inwardly, to live in heaven even while here on earth. It's up to you to choose that, or if you want, you can reject it. But if you want your life as declared your life by the intellect, you cannot have God's life. Take a choice. It's not difficult to see what most people have chosen, is it? They're wandering around caught in the awful conflict of saying with their intellect and with their mouth, saying, I know what is good for me, and no one and nothing is going to stop me from getting it. I'm going to own that new apartment 3 years from now. I've got a plan for doing it. I'm going to get that apartment. Then I'll have a nice income. Then I'll have security. My children will say, you know, my dad used to be poor. We lived in a little shack down by the railroad tracks. But my dad was smart. He went to night school and he studied books on economics. He had a little plan for buying a house and then buying another. And he had his eye on that apartment, and he finally got it. You know, all this is his imaginary, sick, egotistical life, right? And he doesn't know that it's happening. He doesn't know he sold his soul for a mere imaginary picture and the so-called admiration of his children. You know what his children are really thinking about? Inheriting that apartment. That's what they're thinking about. See, let's see, the phrase incredible stupidity is not nearly strong enough, is it? We begin to shatter the incredible stupidity when we know that that is what we have always lived in, not in reality at all, as we credited ourselves with. Here, the Heavenly Father who put us here on earth did not abandon us. Don't get that thought. Because the life energy from on high is always trying to come down to enlighten you, to give you the real meaning of life and give you the real direction you're supposed to walk in, which is upward. Help, assistance, divine compassion is available the split second that you want it. Boy, that draws the line right down the center, doesn't it? You're either on one side or you're on the other. If you want to snarl at the light, you can do that. But you'll snarl in the dark. And it'll get darker and darker and darker. And then the final fatal tragedy, you will fall in love with that darkness and call it light. When I say you, I mean anyone who rejects God's plan for authentic salvation. An insane human being is one who has chosen to be on the wrong side. That's what insanity is. Think of insanity, madness, lunacy. Always think of it in connection with spiritual ideas and thoughts. And I just gave you one. It will help you to see it more clearly. You can't see it if you go by what you read in the society, in the ordinary knowledge and education about insanity. Think of it in connection with spirituality, that insanity is simply an absence from God, a mind that is chosen to believe in its own ridiculous, pernicious plans, programs, and destinations. You always reach the destination you really choose for yourself. And if you were to change your choice, you would change your destination. This knowledge, this knowledge that you're now acquiring, will little by little, but very definitely, free you from accusation and condemnation. The dark part of human nature thrives on accusing and condemning you, using your facilities, your mind, and your emotions to accuse and condemn you. Now, let's slow down a little bit so that we can think about what those words mean in common, ordinary explanation and definition. I said, something is accusing and condemning you. Don't you always feel accused? Yes, you do. By your past. How stupid could I have been when you fill in the blank. Accusation, right? After accusation, the condemnation follows logically, right? Because you did that. You did that awful thing for over a period of time. It was sick. Because you did that, you're accused and you are condemned, therefore you have no chance at all. That's the conclusion it reaches for you, a foreign voice speaking for you, and it's all wrong. Listen to me, don't miss this. You will learn right now how to talk back the right way. I realize this is words now, but you have to start with where you are using your mind right. I want you all to scream out, not in malicious screaming, but with released power of heavenly energy. I want you to talk back right. I want you to say, no, I am not condemned. I am not accused. The false voice says you are stuck where you are and you have to stay there, and you scream back, I am not stuck there and I won't stay there. Come on now, well, I better explain so you don't think you're doing even this in your own power. See, whatever is right, any action, thought that you have, if it's right, it's not yours. It belongs to God. Therefore, even the wildest maniac in a lunatic asylum, if he wanted to choose to no longer be a lunatic, if that's all he had is a flash once during the day, the flash, I want out of here, that's from God. That's the life energy coming down to him. And that's what you could do. See, he had this thought, he might have verbalized it to himself. Maybe he said, looked around, I don't want to be here anymore. This is a wrong place to be. But that's what you have to say. And in connection with this accusation and condemnation, no, at the top of your spiritual voice, you have imposed this life sentence on me for the last time. I am not condemned. I refuse to accept that. I am not going to accept that. You have lied to me for the last time. It won't be the last time, by the way, but you're saying that as a general battle cry of victory. You think that evil is going to give you up. It's so used to having you around, it's going to get lonely without you, so it'll fight back. All these thoughts come to me, and I want to say them as clearly as I can, so I'll give another thought. That persecution of accusation and condemnation, that force cannot enter and tear you apart unless you allow it to, unless you're asleep to it. In other words, don't miss this one. Evil of any kind, including accusation and condemnation, evil needs your cooperation. Withdraw the cooperation and it's sunk. It's done. It'll have to slink away like a cowardly wolf. It'll have to go away and stay. It'll come back, but eventually it'll have to stay away because you haven't made room for it anymore. Now remember that. Ruminate about it. Think about it. I felt that bad feeling over my foolish life in general. I felt that bad feeling, that feeling of defeat. I'm the same as that staggering alcoholic down the street, only I don't drink. I'm drunk inwardly with my own wickedness and sleep state. I have that in me, but I don't have to have it in me. And I resolve, as best I can, best I understand it, I resolve to withdraw my consent to my torture. Because that means if I consented to it, you say, get out of my house. I don't care if you don't understand what you're talking about. You are saying what is right. That's heavenly. You are saying what is right. It's mechanical, I know that. You get out of my house and you stay out. Would you allow a maniac, a bum, a thief to stay in your physical home? You'd put him out, wouldn't you? If he wouldn't go, you'd call the police. You're calling the heavenly police department, which operates 24 hours a day and which has 100% knowledge of how crooks operate, how tricky they are, how they sneak in under disguise, for example, and knock on the door in the form, knock on the door, and you open the door and you wish you hadn't opened the door because you thought it sounded like a friendly knock. You know, like that they know that they knocked lightly. They bang the door down, you know that's something wrong. They knock lightly, they're smooth. They are smooth and you are stupid. Sorry. But to offset that, you can't be, no, to offset it, you can't even become intelligent. But you can avail yourself of the intelligence residing in pure spirituality, in pure energy. All right, a bit of a summary. We've got the lumber, we've got the nails, we've got the hammers, we've got the cement to build our own castle, spiritual castle. Because we don't know how to use them properly, we don't know how to use the tools properly, and we haven't looked at the blueprints, we don't understand the fundamentals of a true spiritual life. We saw when we should bang with a hammer. We dig the ground when we should be pouring cement, whatever. We're doing everything wrong. In the heavenly headquarters are all the instructions you need, but you have to study them and understand them. So that's what you're going to do this afternoon. You're going to dedicate yourself through self-observation, through thinking rightly. You're going to dedicate yourself to learn the mistakes you've been making, after which you will want to correct them. And then the pure energy from heaven will do just that for you, and the building will go up fast. Good morning.